Reading, Son's Heir, Death's Guardian by Engineer 4F.
12. Talia dear, you haven't had a turn. Here you go, Demeter said kindly as she offered the book to her brother's daughter. Thanks, Talia nodded as she grabbed the book. The hunter cleared her throat and began to read. Keep moving, Zoe yelled as they ran through the snowy mountains of New Mexico. Behind them, the monstrous boar squealed angrily as it chased them in a manner that could be called obsessed. The group had tried to face it when they reached a clearing in the pines that made up a forest, only for Grover to stop each of them with a plea. Both Talia and Percy groaned. That was sure annoying. Naruto made sure to remember this incident, just so he could get even with the satyr making them flee from the beast. Maybe he could make a bit of tofu bacon and then force-feed it to him under the guise of it being the real thing. Why didn't we ever think of that? Percy wondered as he cupped his chin in thought. Because you're not that devious, Annabeth said with a light giggle and a roll of her eyes. The planning would have to wait because... Hey now, watch the Tusk-you walking buffet, Naruto cried out as one of the calcium-filled forms of defense grazed him on the ass. If his pants were torn, there would be hell to pay, damn the consequences. Sorry G, but the pig might have to die, Naruto mentally growled as one of his hands reached behind him to check for a scratch. He looked as best he could over his shoulder at the jacket, surprised at its durability. Then again, it was the hide of the Nemean lion, so he shouldn't be so surprised. It did survive a Kaiden technique after all. He then looked forward and wondered why he was at the end of the group. Doesn't the chasing monster always go after the last one in the group when they... Piper began. His thoughts were cut off by Phoebe's cry of, scatter. Split up, she finished pointedly. Naruto groaned as the hunters broke off to the left, followed by a bleeding Grover and an impressively running Percy, though he attuned that to the teen's previous quests in which he ran away while thinking of a plan. Ain't that the truth? Annabeth pointed out with a smile, getting her boyfriend to laugh, too. While he and Talia decided to run towards a cave in the distance. Oh, this is going to be amusing, Hazel chirped with a grin. Talia stumbled over something peeking out from the snow, nearly falling but being helped back up by Naruto, who was starting to use chakra in his run. He didn't do so earlier because he didn't want to leave the group behind. Now it would be a moot point seeing as the group had separated. Those were railroad tracks, Talia said as they gained some distance from the boar that was trying to skewer the teens on its tusks. Naruto took what she said into consideration. Then if I'm right, we've got the best bet of stopping this thing if that tunnel turns out to be too small, he replied as they ran into the tunnel. Smart play, Jason pointed with a nod. They heard a displeased squeal and Naruto grinned. Guess it's not happy with the slight squeeze. The two teens kept running until they saw a light at the end. Naruto opened his mouth, but Talia cut him off. If you say anything about ironically running towards the light, I will trip you. Oh come on, what's life without a little near-death banter? Leo asked with a grin. You're no fun, Talia-chan, grumbled the blonde before they came to a stop just at the edge of the tunnel. Naruto groaned at what he saw while Talia just paled to the point that her skin was just as white as the snow around her. The older demigod just looked up at the sky. Seriously, what the fuck? He asked in aggravation. Don't blame us, Zeus grumbled, like it were any of their faults, humph. Due to the tracks being destroyed and collapsed just a bit outside of the tunnel. He looked at his companion and took hold of Talia's arm as she tried to back away from the edge. The girl's electric blue eyes were as wide as dinner plates and she was muttering incoherently under her breath. Talia groaned at her frozen state and hated her fear of heights. Looking behind him, he could see the large figure of the boar rushing towards them, snorting and squealing out a war cry. He took a deep breath, realizing there was only one solution before looking at Talia. Talia-chan, listen to me. We have to hold our ground, he insisted. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Talia practically shrieked as she looked at him. That pig will push us over the edge. That's a good 100 feet. We'd die from the fall. We'll be fine, he argued. Or we'd land on some sharp debris and then die. There's got to be another way. We can double back in. There's no time to double back. Naruto cut Talia off before lightly cupping her cheek. Talia flushed a bit reading that part, and Aphrodite was squealing a bit in glee, urging the hunter to continue. "We've got 30 seconds till that thing gets to the edge. We have to jump at the right moment. Do you trust me?" There was an echoed squeal behind them, and Naruto did some quick math in his head. 18 seconds, Talia, do you trust me? Blue eyes looked into his and he saw the hesitation in her eyes. Her fear was getting the best of her. The damn ironic fear he made fun of when they first had to deal with it 7 years ago. He hoped that she trusted him, because he's been giving her enough reasons not to. "You really haven't," Talia stated with a frown. There was another squeal and Naruto cursed. They had 15 seconds at best. She was still conflicted. He couldn't wait for an answer, but he needed her coherent for his plan to work. This meant that he had to get her out of her fear-induced state. He couldn't think of anything that would work, so he went with his gut and prayed that it wasn't wrong. Moving his head forward, his lips met hers in a kiss. "Huh?" Talia squeaked in a flustered state as she reread the sentence to make sure she had done so correctly. "Yes," Aphrodite cheered with a shit-eating grin. Aphrodite waved her hand at Talia. "Continue. Now." "Aphrodite, do not tell my hunters what to do," Artemis stated with narrowed eyes, but looked taken back at the wicked shine in the goddess of love's eyes. "No," was the low whisper answer. Talia gulped and continued shakily. He poured feeling into it, his feelings for her, his reassurance that they'd be fine so long as she trusted him. The daughter of Zeus' eyes swiftly lost their fear as confusion and shock took its place. Yeah, she wasn't really expecting that. Nico snickered and a static punch from Talia nearly caved his skull in. The son of Hades protested to the abuse with a cry of, "Hey!" Sure enough though, her shock ebbed away and she returned his initiated kiss, showing her own feelings as their lips stayed locked, giving him her trust in an intimate manner. His hand went from her arm to her waist while her arms wrapped around his neck. "You have a monster chasing you. And you decided to make out," Annabeth deadpanned. She shook her head and sighed out, "Only you, Talia, only you." "It's the other me," Talia protested weakly as her face was ablaze. Reading this was so embarrassing. Another squeal, this one much closer, caused the two to break the kiss. Breathing heavily, they parted and looked each other in the eyes. Naruto pressed his forehead against hers and whispered just as the boar was a second away from barreling into them. "Hirishin no jutsu." "Okay, that had to be like the classiest move to pull just after kissing the girl," Leo stated with a nod of respect. "You don't see stuff like that unless it's in the movies." I know, Aphrodite agreed as she nodded vigorously. A bright yellow flash momentarily blinded the boar, making it squeal in pain and try to stop its charge. It managed to guide itself slightly to the left, becoming airborne against its will. A loud frightened squeal filled the sky as the boar fell and impacted with the snow, becoming thoroughly stuck as it sank into the thick snow-covered ground. Thankfully, it avoided the debris. "An epic monster fail," Percy said, grinning with his thumb facing down. A good few feet away, just as the boar began to fly, Naruto and Talia reappeared in a close embrace. The two were still panting lightly from their kiss, both wondering what happened now. The Lady of Doves was smiling, clapping her hands like she had won the lottery. Talia knew she wanted to know more about the enigmatic blonde. She'd been drawn. "I'm done," Talia shouted, dropping the book. Her face was scarlet. "Oh come on, read it," Leo shouted at her. "No. It can't be that bad," Piper said with a pout. "It is," Talia argued, still red in the face. "It's the feelings of my other self, and they are private." "We don't care," each of the Olympians stated bluntly, getting Talia to look shocked. Even her patron goddess wanted to know. The daughter of Zeus groaned and with pink cheeks, continued. "To him when they were younger by his mysterious past, charmed by his kindness and startling good looks gifted to him by his parents." "Bet you just want to run your fingers through his hair," Piper whispered, making Talia twitch. She had issues showing her true feelings though, which is why she always seemed to be mad at him. "I knew it, boys are usually mean to the girls they like. But I guess it reversed this time," Aphrodite whispered smiling. Talia twitched once more. Being stuck as a tree for 5 years didn't help her develop emotional maturity. Talia decided one thing in her tree, though. When she'd get free, she'd find the blonde boy and get what she wanted. Oh, that just screams Zeus to AT. Poseidon mocked lowly, getting his younger brother to growl at him. Talia, once again, gained a violent twitch. She wanted Naruto to be hers, much like her father when he found a woman to bed. Only this was more emotionally based than based off of lust. Amazing, she knows the difference unlike the horndog himself, Hades snickered. Zeus looked red in the face. Talia on the other hand looked ready to explode. This realization brought forth another and Talia slowly leaned forward to initiate another breathtaking kiss, fully intent on claiming the blonde's lips as hers. The younger half-bloods cooed and awed at Talia, whose face was a shockingly tomato shade. And Nightshade wanted me to swear this off? Talia absently thought as she pulled the blonde's head down closer to her. The hunter felt a small twinge in her heart, a little jealously perhaps. How her other had found someone like that, but kept it to herself. Naruto, who was wondering how badly Talia was going to react to him kissing her, was surprised when her lips pressed against his once again. He thought about his musings of the girl kissing him when he was in his car as the group traveled via Sol train. Apparently, he wasn't the only one that felt that way. This realization made him put his heart into the kiss once again. Talia put down the book, trying to calm herself as she was in a state of fluster. Wow, you really like that guy, Percy whistled, only to get the stink eye from his older cousin. Shut it, wethead, or you'll get some shock therapy, she grunted out. Well, don't stop now, the love goddess smiled victoriously before urging, continue. Talia grumbled and took a sip of water before she resumed reading. Percy was gaping when he stumbled across the two teens kissing each other after following the sound of pig squeals. While the boar was shuffling in its self-made hole, Naruto and Talia were attached at the lips. He figured there was some attraction between the two, confirmed after Grover flat out told him so back in Washington, D.C., but to make out just inches away from death. I know, Percy agreed with his other self with a nod. That lucky son of a. Percy stopped his thoughts as he briefly imagined doing the same with Annabeth. He pushed those thoughts aside with a blush when he realized what he was thinking about. Annabeth smiled slyly at a blushing Percy who looked away, but he was still smiling as he did so. He did enjoy the embarrassed, disgusted, intrigued looks Phoebe and Zoe were giving the two. Although red-faced in embarrassment, Zoe looked like she was going to puke as she watched the two. And for someone who always looked like she was holier than thou, it was one of those sights where he wished he had a camera. Those that knew Zoe snickered in amusement, engraving the image into their minds to save for later. Phoebe simply had a red face while she looking like was trying to understand something. He expected her to be scowling outright at the sight, considering her previous interactions with the blonde, but nope. Percy was surprised to see a contemplating look on her face, making him wonder what was running through her head at the moment. He did note that the two were a good match for each other. They were both tough, loved Annabeth as a sister, and as much as he hated to admit it, both were great at making fun of him. "Ah, Percy, what a sweet thing to say," Annabeth said to him. Percy shrugged, because in a way, yes, they did kind of fit with one another, even the making fun of him part. Now that he thought about it though, he remembered Apollo's words about Naruto's attitude towards him, which led Percy to remember the sun god's suggestion about the old man of the sea. He should probably speak up, but he really didn't want to for fear of the retribution one of the two partaking teens might bestow on him. So he does have some survival instincts, Artemis smiled slyly. Not that he could blame them, though. It was a perfect Kodak moment. Yes, I won the bet. Well, it was until Grover opened his big mouth. Blasted goat, Aphrodite hissed in displeasure. She made note to rock the boat on Grover's relationship to appease herself later on. Talia and Naruto broke their kiss abruptly and looked at the group with shock and embarrassment on their faces. Now, Percy acknowledged he had poor judgment, but he knew that now would not be the time to tease them. He did have some common sense after all. Percy nodded sternly, but everyone else looked on the fence on that one. And some strong self-preservation instincts that were currently screaming at him to keep his mouth shut. As they should, Talia grunted out. Grover, Talia growled as his words clicked in her head. The satyr paled as he realized the girl was looking towards him. She left Naruto's embrace and slowly began stalking towards the satyr, who looked like he was facing down death itself. Wrong godly section G-man, Nico joked. Not the god of the underworld. No, he already did that once, thank you very much. But the entity that mortals called the Grim Reaper, the god of death himself, Thanatos. Something that any mortal would fear. And now Talia. Let's be reason able, Grover stuttered out as he backed away. The raven-haired girl made no move to stop and continued to stalk forward, her eyes glinting with promised pain and misfortune for the satyr. Vengeful little thing she is. I wonder where she gets it from. Poseidon wondered mockingly. Oh, like you're to talk, Zeus countered. Hades rolled his eyes and wanted to add a comment, yet he really didn't want to get pulled into the argument. I have one question for you, Grover. Talia started as she grabbed the goatman's shirt and brought him closer. Quietly she asked in a threatening tone, what, bet? Back at Camp Half-Blood, Annabeth was playing with the kitten her brother sent back to the camp from D.C. She had named him Washington, after her most famous sibling and the kitten's birthplace. Annabeth was cooing at the picture. She wanted one so badly now. But she nodded and praised herself. Great name. Annabeth, stop talking to yourself, Percy chided teasingly, but his girlfriend just stuck out her tongue at him. It was during this that she felt it, a cold chill that reminded her of wearing her baseball cap, which she was going to hopefully find in the Ares cabin, though they should know better than to take it. Whoa, why are my kids first to be blamed? Ares asked, turning to his niece questioningly. Really? You have to ask? Athena asked mockingly with a snort, saving her daughter the trouble of answering. Ares just grumbled to himself about stupid war brains. But far less potent in madness that accompanied Hades' signature aura. No, this was a more pain-filled promise type of aura. Scooping Washington up in her arms, Annabeth stood up and looked to the door of her cabin, swallowing slightly as the feeling faded away. Scratching the kitten behind the ear, she murmured, what was that? Painful retribution for the future Annie. Retribution, Talia stated in a calm before the storm tone. Naruto winced as Grover's scream of fear died down and he once again passed out. Granted, he was afraid of Talia at that moment, but seriously, that's like the 8th time he's passed out. Naruto made a vow to improve Grover's tolerance to feminine anger and life-threatening situations. Come to think of it, wasn't he on that lightning thief quest and fought against Medusa? And he was kidnapped by a Cyclops, right? You'd think someone would get desensitized to this stuff after that. It's part of his charm, Annabeth assured with a nod. Grover wouldn't be Grover if he didn't freak out. Then again, Naruto wasn't one to talk. He already died and came back to life, defeated a self-proclaimed god, and kicked the ass of the strongest chakra entity while in limbo. Not to mention he had a career that dealt with death almost every day. Then there was the fact he had let their group run off, probably making Grover feel responsible for him. Jason whistled. That was a short list of some of things this guy has done. Maybe he should apologize to the goat boy. Well, he could do that later. After he apologized to Talia and Annabeth for the same reason, and recovered from the apology. Yeah, we would probably beat his head in, Talia theorized in thought. Annabeth nodded to this with crossed arms. Still, the fact remains, Grover needed to be able to handle feminine rage if he wanted to get a girlfriend. However, Naruto knew that Grover had good reason to pass out. Talia was a scary girl sometimes. I thought it was all the time, Nico asked innocently. I have a book in hand. You want it upside your head? The hunter asked threateningly. See, all the time, the death boy pointed out. He then added with a smile, but no, please, by all means continue. Talia just glared at him before doing just that. Nice job, Grace. Now how will we get back on track? Phoebe asked with a scowl. Talia sent her a glare and opened her mouth to retort but was interrupted by Zoe. It's her fault for getting distracted by Uzumaki, the hunter replied in disgust. I can't believe thou actually kissed him. Thy lips must now be tingling in pain. Oh, they really think kissing is painful? Aphrodite asked Artemis with a mocking look and a laugh. You pass out that tidbit of info, Artemis? It's not like you know or anything. Artemis just crossed her arms, not pleased by that comment to her person. Hey, that's a low blow, Zoe-chan, Naruto replied with a pout. He looked at the blushing Taliah and said, I have it on good accord that I'm a great kisser. What did you think, Taliah? 10 out of 10? Yeah, Taliah, tell us. Piper asked in a giggle. Read on, let us hear. Taliah was blushing as she read the next part. Yes, I mean, shut up. Taliah quickly corrected herself, her blush deepening. Did it make your toes curl? Leo asked in wonder after he whistled. His answer was a cupcake to the eye. Ow. Vanilla. Before she looked at Zoe with a glare. I don't want to deal with you right now. What I want to know is how much time do we have left? Where are we? And what the hell was Grover talking about? Someone's cranky, Jason pointed out with a smile. Well, she just kissed the guy, so she may be hyped up on the rush of it. Piper smiled slyly to her boyfriend. Okay, enough with the byplay. Taliah cried out in distress. It's been 2 days, Naruto answered as he looked at the sky, and Dad's afterglow is just around 250. We've got less than 4 days to find Auntie Arte. We're in New Mexico, Percy supplied helpfully. I caught a glance at the sign when we got off the train. Speaking of, Naruto, did you know that? Yeah, I knew it was my dad, the blonde dismissed with a wave before crossing his arms and looking away. Hard to forget when Dad snuck a box of condoms in my car. Artemis just slapped her brother upside the head. You lack so much class. Ow, come on, that was other me. Yet you would still do it to another son, I bet. I plead the fifth. He snuck you what? Phoebe asked with a furrowed brow. Nothing, just forget I said anything, replied the guardian as he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Now as to how we get west, I say we all climb aboard the Pork Chop Express here. My cousin had to have a good reason to send him our way. Cousin? Percy asked as he helped a waking Grover to his feet. Hooves. Annabeth palmed her face and groaned, Percy. Percy said nothing, so he didn't study, big deal. The satyr stood up and used Percy as a human shield to keep Taliah from getting to him. The boar started to slowly rise out of its hole, snorting and squealing quietly as it did so. You know, God of the Wild, son of Hermes? Naruto replied nonchalantly as he patted the side of the boar. I mean, who else can send us the Erymanthian boar? Then I was right, Grover announced with a smile as he leaned against the boar's side. It's a gift from the wild. Wait, but who sent him? Percy continued to ask while the others started to climb on the boar. Zoe rolled her eyes and took a seat in front of Phoebe, who sat before Taliah that plopped down in front of Naruto. Grover scrambled to the top of the boar's head and pulled out a stick, rope and an apple he had packed and found respectively. The blonde helped the son of Poseidon aboard the boar before nodding to Grover. Naruto looked at Percy and spoke, You're an idiot, do you know that? Who is the one person Grover would do anything to find? It was just said, too, Hazel pointed out. Percy's eyes widened. You mean? Just before the boar arrived, Grover, the hunters and I felt the presence of Pan, Naruto answered softly. Giddy up, Grover called out as he dropped the lure in front of the boar's eyes. The giant beast's equally giant orbs focused on the fruit before him and escaped its trap with vigor. Soon enough, the sextet was once again on their way. The oddest ride off in the distance picture ever, Leo stated as his head tilted to the side. Guess this is the end of the road, Naruto mumbled as the boar came to a stop somewhere in Arizona. He and Percy slid off with thankful groans. The boar was fast, that was for sure, but it's nowhere near comfortable. Percy nodded in sympathy while Jason, Leo and Nico gave pitying looks to the picture. Oh gods above, that hurt, Naruto groaned before turning around and helping Taliah off the boar. If we ever go on a date, just know that I refuse to go bareback riding. Noted, Taliah replied softly as her cheeks heated up from being helped down. Oh, she's all meek and happy now, Tilda. Aphrodite giggled happily. Taliah just shifted in her seat a bit. After he had taken his hands off her hips, she took a step back and looked around, taking notice of a small building in the distance. She then looked at the son of Apollo and said, There's a building nearby. Maybe we can get our bearings there and some food. I'm all for some food. Zoe? Naruto asked, inquiring whether or not she wanted to get something to eat. Talia gave a noticeable frown as he looked to the huntress in question. "Oh, she possessive of him now," Piper giggled. "How's that any different from you?" Talia sniped back with a dismissive snort, getting Piper to flush. "Thy plan is good. We should conserve our supplies for when we are away from civilization," Zoe said with a nod. Phoebe was already walking towards the town, and Percy could have sworn he saw stars in her eyes at the mention of food. Naruto turned to tell Grover to hurry up, only to palm his face at what he saw. The satyr was giving the Ebor a teary goodbye. While he understood that this renewed hope in the goat boy, he didn't need to waste 20 minutes saying goodbye to one of the planet's most dangerous creatures. "G-Man, come on. Let's get some food," Percy said, thankfully speeding the farewell process up and getting Grover to return to the group. Thank the gods, he would probably stay there all day hugging the thing, Nico groaned. The 6 travelers made their way to the close small building, only to find as they stood 10 feet away from the door that it was closed. Grover and Percy fell to their knees in anguish. Phoebe looked ready to join them from the disappointment on her face. Naruto sighed and scratched his head while both Zoe and Talia flanked him and glared at the closed sign. Then there was a bright light behind them, making the group turn just as a large pink limousine pulled up nearby. Subtle, Artemis rolled her eyes. Aphrodite sniffed before she countered, "At least I don't reek of deer droppings." Artemis just narrowed her eyes at the goddess of love threateningly. The driver door opened and out came a man that just screamed bad news. Naruto noted that he was dressed in a suit that would be seen on Jason Statham and wore a chauffeur hat that looked way out of place for the man. Black sunglasses hid his eyes and his face was set in a permanent scowl. He and the others had different reactions to the man. While the group glared and hissed his name out, Naruto grinned mischievously and greeted the man, "Hello Uncle Ares." "Don't look at me like that, you stupid punk," Ares growled with a very uncharacteristic shudder from the look. "Oh, he must have gotten to you good if he has you shuddering," Athena said with mirth. She only got a grunt in response. "Oh come on, you're not still sore about losing are you?" Naruto inquired with a smirk. "I mean, you did accept my challenge." "Ha, he challenged you and you still lost," Apollo grinned. "Shut it, Sunspot." "Yeah, but when you said war one was expecting blood and guts." Not that," Ares shuddered. "Oh get over it, so you lost a prank war, big deal." All hell broke loose as every demigod roared in laughter. The gods managed to restrain themselves with grin. "Though, I still can't believe you fell for the whoopee cushion," Naruto said with a smile as he recalled getting the best of the god of war in a prank war. "I'm so holding this over you, forever," Hephaestus jeered. Sure, Ares' pranks, though they were far from being pranks and leaning more towards homicidal traps, were dangerous to one's health. Athena shook her head. Prank does not mean kill. Naruto's were dangerous to one's ego. It didn't help that the deciding prank managed to replace all of Ares' attire with that of a Hello Kitty fan's complete room. Hermes and Apollo burst into applause in laughter. The god of thieves managed to ask aloud, "How? I have to know." Needless to say, Ares admitted defeat. "Stuff it you little brat, you're lucky I don't kill you. And that my girl likes you," though the second portion was said in a mutter. "I know I do," Aphrodite said with twinkling eyes. Ares recomposed himself and glared at Percy. You I won't hesitate to kill." "I beat you once before, I'll do it again," Percy replied confidently. Naruto's respect for the kid went up a notch, but he kept that to himself. Best not inflate Seaweed Brain's ego, Annabeth teased her now pouting boyfriend. "Yeah, well, you're lucky I don't like to be violent in front of a lady," Ares grumbled as he walked towards the back. "Now you and Blondie, come on. I got stuff to do and the lady doesn't like to be kept waiting." "Hold on, Lord Ares, we won't let thou take them," Zoe said stepping forward. Ares turned around and a smirk crossed his face. "Yeah, I think you will. Last time I wasn't prepared to go all out," the god replied with a smirk as a sword manifested in front of him. He took hold of the handle and prepared himself. "We'll go with you, Uncle Ares," Naruto said, diffusing the situation before there could be one. "You guys wait here." "And do what?" Talia countered as she brought her shield and spear out. Ares lowered his blade and snapped his fingers. The building they were across from came to life and the smell of freshly cooked food hit the teen's nostrils. Reluctantly, Talia put her weapons away and crossed her arms. She glared at the blonde and relented. Fine. But if anything happens to you, I'm blaming him. Oh, so cute. Willing to point blame and hurt someone just for her future boyfriend, Piper said with a smirk, making Talia glare at her to shut up. Ares shrugged. Works for me. More anger equals more violence. Athena rolled her eyes. Of course you would say that. Just go get some food, guys. Naruto sighed as he pushed Percy forward. Come on, Waterboy. Let's go meet the pants of the relationship. Snickers broke out between the gods at that one. Ares' eye twitched behind his glasses while he held the door open. He stopped Naruto from entering and shut the door behind Percy. Naruto arched his own brow but shrugged it off as the two settled into a comfortably tense silence. Odd, yes, but Naruto knew his uncle well enough not to try and entice a conversation. It would only lead to an argument. 5 minutes later, Percy came out with a contemplating look on his oddly flushed face. The Lady of Doves giggled as Percy did flush as he remembered the conversation. Ares pulled the son of Poseidon out of the way and pointed at Naruto. The blonde rolled his eyes and climbed in, noting how comfortable the seat was before looking at who summoned him. He caught a glimpse of what looked to be an older Talia. A good sign, Talia, Aphrodite commented smugly. His mother's face, a tanned girl he knew in California looking a bit older and even his aunt's usual features coming to the surface. Yes, a rival has appeared, Aphrodite squealed out in glee. Talia had a frown on her face at that. Well, at least he thinks you're pretty, Arte, Apollo teased his sister, who didn't comment. Her hair was constantly changing textures and colors, primarily matching his mother's red and Talia's raven locks. The one thing about her that wasn't constantly changing, aside from her bust size oddly enough, was her eye color. Her eyes were heterochromatic, with the left being electric blue and the right being a beautiful green. Just like Talia's and his mother respectively. The woman giggled, a harmonic sound that made him blush. He knew she couldn't help but tease him. It was her nature as the goddess of love. There, I'm done. Someone else read. Talia grunted as she dropped the book to her side. Frank now knew. The son of Mars knew where he had to go. He turned, his soul filled with resolve as he took his first step. The others could only be at one place. Olympus. That was the only thing that made sense. The other was that they were kidnapped by psychotic gerbils, but that was probably just his delirium talking. Ho! He cried out as he headed to New York, hitchhiking his way there. 13. Mine, Aphrodite cried out, snatching the book up after Talia dropped it. All right, whoa, Talia exclaimed with shock at the goddess lunge for the book. Aphrodite skipped back to her throne and opened it in giddy excitement, earning many strange looks from the others in the room. So, what can I do for you, Lady Aphrodite? Naruto asked, the first portion of the question coming out tightly from his beating heart. He regained control of himself quickly, but now he was embarrassed for the near squeak he had at the beginning. It happens to the best of us, kiddo, Apollo nodded to himself. Oh pooh, you're more like your aunt, Aphrodite sighed out in dismay. I take solace in that, Artemis smiled. Her chin resting on her hand. Where's the fun son of Apollo? The wooer of women's son? The boy who is a flirtatious match for any female. Wow, that last one is singing a bit of praise right there, Hermes called out. Well, if other me says so, why not agree with it? The love goddess asked before continuing. He's out right now, you can leave a message if you like, Naruto replied, looking to his fingers in order to avoid eye contact. Besides, your boyfriend is playing bouncer. Oh please, he's just a big teddy bear once you know how to persuade him, Aphrodite said with a dismissive wave of her hand. Naruto turned a little green and groaned at the thought. The demigods quickly followed the protagonist's example. Aphrodite rolled her eyes at his response. You are your father's son, your mind goes straight to the gutter. Now, I didn't come here to talk to you about my sex life. Thank the gods, the blonde demigod thought in relief before he inquired. Then why are you here, if I may ask? Manners? How charming. Oh, if only you'd gone to the camp sooner. Aphrodite sighed out as the possibilities flashed across her mind. Maybe one of my girls could have broken your heart. Thanks, the unsure Naruto replied. That was the one thing he didn't understand about the goddess of love. If she was all for people getting together, why did she want her children to break hearts? Honestly, it seemed way more than ass backwards if you asked him. Here, Piper quipped with a scowl. Oh, there's no need to thank me, Aphrodite replied, ignoring his confusion. I do what I must, because I'm the only one who can. Now, as to why I'm here, I want to help you. Oh, this won't end well. Naruto thought as he paled. Help me? Yes, with Zeus girl, the rough and tough act is a mask, you know, Aphrodite said matter-of-factly. Really? Asked Talia's cousins. It isn't, the hunter grunted. Yes it is Tilda, Aphrodite whispered loudly. She really just wants to be treated just like any other girl. Held, kissed, spoiled, the works. Which also means she wants to know about you. Ah, Talia wants kisses Tilda, Nico said making smooch faces at her. Shut up, Talia shouted in embarrassment. She wasn't like that. Really. Despite these inward assurances, Talia started shuffling in her seat a bit uncomfortably. I'll tell her about me when I'm ready, Naruto replied softly. Oh, I'm not just talking about your past in the Hidden Lands. The goddess continued before eyeing the blonde slyly. I'm talking about your past relationships. Wah, Talia thought with a twitch of mild anger, but shook her head a bit. Chill yourself girl, come on. What past relationships? Naruto asked with a furrowed brow before his eyes widened. Wait, you don't mean that. Oh but I do, giggled out the goddess as the blonde paled significantly. I wonder how she'll respond to you knowing about the other campers you know. So he not only knows but has been there, Jason mused in thought. Oh, but if he knew Talia before going there, then he knows a certain child of the sky I bet Tilda. Aphrodite smiled big time as she made the connection. Then he knows me, Jason. Jason and Talia concluded at the same time. Talia clenched her fists in anger while Jason wondered what his other's life was like with this guy in it. They're more like a small state if you ask me, Naruto grumbled as he ran a hand down the side of his face. Man. When Talia-chan finds out she's going to kill me. I don't know if I could handle dying again. Damn right I would, growled the girl. Aphrodite squealed. I can't wait. The drama, the romance. Oh, it'll be right up there with Perkabeth. Neria versus Naina. Whose heart will swell and whose will break. One of my finest works yet. Naina? Piper questioned before her eyes widened as she deciphered the other name, Reina. Jason whistled. That's something to go against. Why do I feel that it is going to rain blood? Leo asked. Because it just may happen, Nico pointed out blandly. Gee, glad to know you find my love life entertaining, snarked the blonde teen with a twitching brow. He rubbed his temples with both hands and continued softly. Now I know why Auntie Arte doesn't like you. Artemis smiled smugly at that with a nod. It was good that her nephew agreed with her. Artemis, talk about a lost cause, scoffed the goddess. Her hunters are no better. Especially that little nightshade brat. Ooh, what I'd do just to get my hands around her neck for how many plans of mine she's ruined. Do not threaten my hunters, Artemis warned the goddess of love. Aphrodite rolled her eyes and resumed reading. Hey, I know she's a hunter and against everything you are, but she's still part of my family. Naruto defended the girl he considered a cousin. Artemis smiled slightly at that while Aphrodite pouted. Aphrodite narrowed her eyes at the demigod. Are you threatening me, demigod? Oh snap, Ares mumbled, recognizing the look. No, but I won't let my cousin get threatened just because you don't agree with her. Naruto shot back with a glare. They held their gaze for a good few seconds before Aphrodite broke and squealed happily. The sudden noise caused Naruto to blink in confusion at the borderline bipolar mood swing before he was suddenly wrapped up in a hug. Blushing at the embrace, he was caught way off guard when Aphrodite kissed his cheek. Naruto lit up like a Christmas tree as the goddess sat back and squealed something incoherently. Way to go, Naruto, Apollo crowed in approval. Either ignoring or ignorant of the blonde's dilemma, Aphrodite spoke. The familial protectiveness that you share with Apollo is so cute. You're just like your father, if not a bit more mature. Hey. We all know it's true, Artemis scoffed. Aphrodite nodded in agreement, with all the other gods. TTH thanks, the still-red Naruto replied. Inwardly he heard the Hallelujah chorus playing and he could imagine his dad giving him 2 thumbs up. He would, said all of the divine. Apollo said it smugly as the others deadpanned. He then imagined his mother and aunt slamming their fists onto the top of his head. Still liking this woman more and more, Artemis said as she grinned cheekily to her brother, who pouted in return. Sadly, he knew that if he ever told the 3 of them in the same room, that would be the most likely scenario to occur. My family is so weird, internally groaned the blonde demigod while Aphrodite continued to list off Apollo's good qualities that he had inherited. Seems he got a lot, the sun god grinned wildly. Unfortunately, Naruto returned his focus on the goddess just as she said, and from your father you've gotten a rather impressive 9-inch long, 2-inch thick. Mom, Piper shouted with cheeks ablaze, along with the other demigoddesses. The guys were looking a bit green. Talia banged the back of her head on the couch to banish the image that was just not going away. Don't talk about that, Naruto cried out with a red face, thoroughly embarrassed by the thought of the goddess of love knowing his measurement, or Rhea forbid, his father's. What? Sex is a crucial part of romance, Aphrodite shrugged nonchalantly before grinning slyly at the blonde, and I should know. Those words have defiled my mind with the images inspired by them. Naruto groaned as his head fell back against the leather and his eyes closed. After recomposing himself, the blonde demigod asked, Are you purposely delaying our quest, Lady Aphrodite? Oh heavens no, I've already helped you with that, the goddess said with a sly smile. Just ask Percy when you leave. I do want to know more about you and that Bologna girl, though. That's Reina all right, Hazel deadpanned. Oh the scandal of a Roman and a Greek. Athena might just faint about it. Or kill me for being a traitor, grumbled the blonde as he rubbed his head. That's possible, very in fact. I support it, the wisdom goddess stated with a void of emotions. Damn it, now I really need a drink. Ah, chided Aphrodite, no alcohol when on a quest. Law of the camp. Since when? Naruto asked incredulously. His dad never mentioned that law. Now how the hell was he supposed to get a god's damn drink? Again, my everlasting plight, the god of wine mused with melancholy. Since Dionysus' son Mitchell died while inebriated some decade ago, the goddess answered with a smirk. Oh Mitchell. You always did know how to grow a grape, and you would always tell me how it tasted too to help ease the pain, Mr. D moaned with real tears. He then wailed while leaning into his throne, Mitchell. As the assigned guardian hung his head in depression, she looked at her buzzing phone and sighed. Of course he wants to talk now. Well, I guess our time is up, Naruto. Thank you, Uncle Hephaestus. Naruto thought to his uncle in gratitude. He smiled at the goddess. Thank you for the talk, Lady Aphrodite. It was enlightening. As he prepared to go, Aphrodite stopped him with, Wait, but you haven't heard what I want from you yet. Oh order. Here it comes, Artemis groaned. Damn, Naruto's head hung and he sat back down. Rubbing his head, he then looked at the goddess and asked, And what can I do for the goddess of love? That's not considered M-rated. You're far too much like your aunt, do you know that? Aphrodite muttered with a frown before she grinned. I demand a performance. Got to be more specific, Dite. He might think you want him to strip for you, Apollo laughed out. Artemis hit him upside the head. Aphrodite mused about the idea. She kinda liked the sound of it. The demigod calendar did sound appealing. See come again? Aphrodite giggled at his confused face. Oh please. You know what I mean. Like what you did for those at the other camp. Something fun, flashy, something Greek. We had a concert, Jason said in amazement. Percy, in disbelief, followed this, asking, at Camp Jupiter? You do know that performance nearly got me killed, right? Naruto deadpanned as he emphasized that what had happened was not, in any way, planned. Details. Do something fun, after this whole mess is over. Get your brothers and sisters in on it for all I care. Aphrodite continued before becoming stern, but focus on love. But of course, Aphrodite nodded to herself. Naruto gaped at the goddess of love and wondered why she wanted him to do something his father would be more than happy to ask for. Before he could ask Aphrodite what she meant, Ares opened the door, reached into the limo and grabbed his shoulder. Time's up, punk, Ares grumbled as he pulled the blonde out, slamming the door shut after doing so. After Naruto landed on his ass in the Arizona desert, he looked up to see Aphrodite smiling at him from the open window. Good luck on your quest, Naruto, she said as Ares started her limousine back up, and do use protection. Chiron can hardly handle the teenagers, let's not leave that old horse with baby issues, non. Talia blushed up a storm and hid her face in her jacket, while covering her head with her hands. Why her? As the goddess limo drove away, Naruto had one thought in his head. What did she really want from me? Who knows what is going through her head, Heir mumbled as she rolled her eyes. Percy sighed as he stirred his milkshake while leaning against the once again dark building. He had rejoined the group at the small building, which turned out to be a small restaurant, and had gotten a chocolate shake to drown his troubles away while he thought about what he had just discussed with Aphrodite. Or rather, what she had informed him about. The others had left him to think while they waited for Naruto to come back and make a game plan, which he was grateful for. Percy had never before felt so relieved that the quest wasn't his. It let him focus on what the goddess of love had told him, which he wasn't sure if it was serious news or just gossip from how she said it. Aphrodite had warned him that the hunters were recruiting Annabeth, and that they couldn't be trusted. Artemis sent a glare to the gossiper's way, but the current reader ignored it. She revealed that she also gave the Stoll brothers the shirt laced with centaur blood to limit the amount of hunters going on the quest and possibly getting Annabeth to go with them, but Naruto had stopped that plan. Bad Naruto, Aphrodite pouted prettily. Twice in fact, much to her annoyance. He didn't know what to think. Was Annabeth going to leave Heir, the camp, just like that, all because of Luke? Annabeth rolled her eyes and nudged her boyfriend with her shoulder. Percy looked away blushing. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash of light and a voice asking from behind him, "So what did Aphrodite say to you?" Percy did not scream like a girl, no matter what Naruto or Talia may say. Annabeth snickered while the other demigods outright laughed at the groaning boy. He did make an impressive impression of a grasshopper with his jump, though. Turning to glare at the older teen, Percy said, "Don't do that." "Do what?" Naruto countered with a grin before he vanished once more and reappeared behind the younger demigod. "This?" "Well, when you tell someone to not do something." Leo trailed off with a grin. "Yes, that," Percy cried out as he faced the blonde again. Naruto crossed his arms and nodded his head. "I give no promises," he replied childishly. The maiden goddess sighed and looked at her twin with the corner of her eye. "He gets that from you." Apollo just smiled proudly. "Well, I see no problem with it," Hermes added with a snicker. Before he became serious once again, "So, what did Aphrodite say to you?" She said that we'd have to go through her husband's junkyard, but to not take anything," Percy answered with a shrug. Naruto nodded and then stared intently at the teen, disturbing Percy. The raven-haired teen fidgeted uncomfortably before asking, "What are you looking at me like that for?" "Because he can smell your bullshit?" Talia supplied with a smirk. "I'm waiting for you to tell me what else she said," Naruto insisted, his eyes narrowing. "Well, that was it," Percy lied as he shifted his weight. Naruto frowned. "Right. And I'm the unicorn wizard. I ride for justice on a comet of stars. And have a sidekick named Princess Handjob," sarcastically replied the older teen in making Percy stifle a snicker at the name of the sidekick. Every male snickered at that one. Naruto shook his head. "Look, just tell me what she told you and I'll leave you alone. I know she said something and I know when you're lying." The younger teen gave him a look of disbelief, to which Naruto rolled his eyes. "Dad's the god of truths. Your eyes aren't meeting mine." Your heartbeat increased slightly and your fingers continued to twitch nervously. "Huh, you learn something new every day," Annabeth said with a predatory smile and sent it to her boyfriend. The other boys sent him looks of pity. Apollo snickered, It's why my kids clean house at poker nights against Hermes here. I've been wondering about that for some time now, Hermes mused. Percy, seeing no way out of it after being outed the way he was, sighed. All right, she said. The hunters couldn't be trusted. That they were recruiting Annabeth. That's why they showed up in Maine. Naruto hummed and held his chin while he thought before speaking. Interesting. Annie must have been feeling insignificant or useless. Say what? Annabeth shouted in shock as she stood up to yell. Why would she feel that way? Percy asked curiously. He had never thought that Annabeth, who helped him slay Medusa and rescue Grover, would feel insignificant or useless when she seemingly did so much already. Darn right. Naruto sighed and scratched his head. Look, I don't know if I should tell you this, because I haven't told Talia or Grover yet. You know I was part of their group, right? Yeah, so? What we haven't told you is that I found Annabeth first, Naruto continued. Yes, some backstory, Aphrodite cheered. I found her when I was in San Francisco following a clue my dad left me as to his identity. In California? You left him a clue in California? Artemis rounded on her brother with dangerous eyes. Are you mad? Apollo shrugged haplessly. Hey, I have no clue what other me was thinking, so lay off, sis. She was sneaking around to find shelter. She told me who and what she was after I saved her from some street punks picking on her for entering their turf. Wow, Annabeth whispered. I put 2 and 2 together and decided to go with her. This was before I knew who my dad was, mind you, so I was all for going to a camp and meeting some family. I was her companion to New York, where my dad gave me a place to live which I should probably make sure is still untouched from her house in San Francisco. We traveled for 3 months on foot, fighting monsters along the way. 3 months. On foot. Talia shivered at the thought, memories of her own time alone coming to surface. Whoa, Percy said in awe. Now what I'm going to tell you is between us. You don't repeat it, ever, got it? Naruto asked while glaring down at the younger teen. Percy nodded. Give me your word, Naruto insisted, that you will not repeat it until Annabeth tells you about our traveling. I swear not to repeat it, but she said it was her mother who guided her, Percy replied in confusion. Naruto grinned. Aunt Athena, good cover. You could say it was her wisdom that led us through the night, Naruto replied with a smirk as he crossed his arms and leaned back against the wall. Really now? Athena questioned. Well, along the way, fighting the monsters. I was the only one fighting. Annabeth winced at that. She did not like the sound of that at all. Annabeth always hid, before or after I would tell her to, which gave me a heart attack every time she vanished. Though, she was a thinker, not a fighter. I was also small, the blonde girl argued with a pout, trying to play off the fact that she was really young to properly fight. It bruised her ego a bit that she had to hide a lot when she was on her own. A builder, too, Percy sighed, thinking about his crush and her constant rambling over architecture facts that most of the time flew over his head. It'll get stuck in there sooner or later, Nico stated. Gods know how much she talks about. She still rambles about buildings? Naruto asked incredulously before looking at the stars and shaking his head. Annie. I miss her. Ah, isn't that sweet? Talia teased Annabeth. Big bro misses Lil, sis. Percy looked at the older teen questionably, making Naruto answer his unasked question. She's my little sister, Jackson. It's been 7 years since we last saw each other and only a few days after we reunite, we're separated again. Reminds me of Auntie Arte and my dick of a dad. Percy nervously looked up and eyed the skies, waiting for retribution, before looking at Naruto with a jealous frown. How do you get away with that? Well, my kid's a dick, so he'll try his best to badmouth me. Apollo frowned, more like pouted. What, insulting my dad? Naruto asked. Getting a nod, Naruto chuckled. Well, my dad's one of the most laid-back gods, right up there with Uncle Herm. Damn right we are, Hermes stated, getting frowns from the other gods and goddesses. Dad feels bad that he can't visit his kids, being in charge of the sun and all, but see, he forgot about me for 15 years of my life. He feels bad about leaving me where I was born after what he was forced to do. Are you sure he forgot? Maybe your mom was lying to you to protect you, Percy interjected, My mom did that. Naruto chuckled. I wish. Kind of hard to lie to me when you die after I'm born, though. Oh. Sorry. Apologized the son of Poseidon. Wow. Dick move, Percy. Nico reprimanded. Oh, be quiet. What was he supposed to say to that? Percy didn't know how he would have turned out if he didn't have his mother. Seriously, with a woman like Sally Jackson as your mother, there's no shame in being a mama's boy. Hell yeah, there isn't, Percy said in a stern tone. Besides him, no one else really had a good mortal mom experience. One either died or was terrible. Don't worry about it, Naruto shrugged before looking back up at the sky. I'm used to it. Yeah, because that helps, Percy thought, feeling even worse than before. The demigods agreed with the other Percy on that. However, my granduncle/boss gave me a sweet deal to visit my mom whenever I wanted to. Though I think that's because he's trying to hook me up with Hecate and keep me under his employ for the rest of my life, Naruto mumbled. Yeah, I would do that. Thus far he has shown excellent credentials, Hades pointed out with a quirked lip. Out the last bit, before his eyes widened. Crap. I gotta check that paper for any marriage traps. I would do that, too. Aw, fine print. How I love you, Hades said smugly. Marriage what? Percy asked, catching the last statement after he zoned out when the older teen alluded to Hades. His uncle was one freaky dude, not to mention a jerk for kidnapping his mother. True that, Percy said while glaring at his uncle for a second. Poseidon's glare lingered a bit longer than his son's. Nothing. Just a problem I'll have to deal with later, Naruto grumbled as he massaged his temples. He looked up at the dark sky and sighed. Great, there's another hour gone. Come on, Jackson. Let's get the others and tell them about Uncle Hef's junkyard. Naruto walked away from the building and went towards the group. Percy quickly followed after him. They regrouped and Naruto explained the situation, getting everyone ready to go, until Grover asked the question that put the group on hold once more. So what did Aphrodite want from you, Naruto? Asked the satyr curiously. Naruto immediately blushed upon recalling what he went through in the pink limo, and Talia, who started to grit her teeth, noticed this. Aphrodite smiled at Talia, who avoided her gaze with her own, not wanting to deal with her right now. Before he could deflect the question and recover from his small blush, Naruto found himself pulled nose to nose with the punk daughter of Zeus. Someone's in trouble, Tilda, Piper sang out with a grin. Naruto's gulp was audible to the remaining four, and allowed the two remaining males to sit back and watch the show. Zoe and Phoebe on the other hand felt their eyes twitch at the sight as they wanted to finish the quest as soon as possible. Artemis smiled at her hunter's concern. What did she want from you, Naruto? Talia asked with a tone that promised pain if he tried to get out of answering. So demanding, Hazel joked. Resigning his fate, Naruto looked to the ground and mumbled incoherently. He was immediately shocked by the girl he kissed and forced to look her in the eye. Louder, Talia growled as she held the blonde teen by the collar of his jacket. Spank me, mistress, Leo joked, getting a shock. Ow. Is it wrong that I find this hot? A small voice asked in the back of Naruto's mind. Well, that kind of play can be fun, the Lady of Doves mused with a finger on her chin. Talia blanched at that. It was immediately banished by the blonde, who repeated himself. She wanted me to put together a concert for Camp Half-Blood. Percy and Grover looked at each other before stifling a snicker. Seriously? She wanted the blonde to put on a concert? That sounded so stupid. Not really, Aphrodite said with a pout. What else? That can't have been it. Talia pushed with a frown. Naruto swallowed nervously as he thought of what to do. Does he tell her what he knows and risk their relationship, or does he hold it back? You so better not, Talia frowned deeply. I can't say, he said after a moment of thinking up a lie. She made me swear not to speak of it. Talia looked at him for a long moment before releasing her grip on his jacket, shoving him away with a growl. Fine. Talia looked upset about that one. The raven-haired girl abruptly turned around and began storming off. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck as he watched her storm towards the west. He saw the flash of betrayal and hurt that flashed across her eyes, but he couldn't tell her about that camp. Not yet. Damn it, Why did his dad have to be the god of truths? Why did horrible lying have to be hereditary in Apollo's gene pool? Apollo groaned. I know. What was I thinking back then? Now I can barely get away with anything. With a resigned sigh, he gestured for the others to follow him and they quickly caught up with the fuming daughter of Zeus. Talia flexed her hands as she continued to storm on through the night. Why didn't he trust her? Wasn't it enough that she trusted him? Maybe it was because he still thought she needed to be protected. She hadn't needed to be protected since she was a little girl. Talia nodded with herself on that one as she held her jacket closer together. He was my first kiss. Wasn't it enough that I gave him that? What else does he want? Does he want me to tell him that I... Say it, Percy shouted with glee. Payback. Talia felt like tearing her hair out with how useless this thought process was. If she couldn't even admit to how she felt about him in her head, how did she expect to express herself to him vocally? Well, I could give you some tips, or well, my other self, she really should have, Aphrodite mused as she continued. Penny for your thoughts? Talia jumped as Grover walked up next to her. She looked ahead and took notice of Naruto and Percy talking about their early adventures. Naruto's over the past 7 years and Percy's previous 2 quests, while Zoe and Phoebe seemed to be having their own discussion. What are you doing back here, Grover? The daughter of Zeus asked with a frown. I thought you'd be up there with my waterlogged cousin and the blonde idiot. Grover chuckled. Yeah. Talia, don't you think you're being a little pushy? Landmine, Piper hissed painfully. What do you mean pushy? The girl countered as her eyes narrowed. Sensing danger, Grover explained himself. Smart goat, Leo quipped. Talia, you're not the only one that doesn't know everything about him. We were going to once we got to camp, but we've never did get all of Naruto's story because he, you know. Yeah, that reminds me, I have to kick his ass for making us leave him behind, Talia said with a smirk. Grover smiled back at her, prompting her to drop her smirk and sigh sadly. She looked up and watched as the blonde smacked Percy upside the head for something, reminding her of what he used to do with Luke when they were just walking through the city. So he's treating me like he would Luke? Percy asked. Also something else he once answered, why was everyone hitting him? He didn't have to stay behind, Talia whispered with a frown. We could have handled them as a group. Talia, none of us were ready to face the bull man, Grover replied, putting a hand on her shoulder reassuringly. At least he had that clone thing to back him up when he fought against that horde. And you're not the only one who feels like we let him down. Annabeth, me. Even Luke. But it wasn't you that thing was after, Talia retorted as her eyes moistened, coming to a stop and facing the satyr. It was my fault. He pushed me away when I could have helped him. I should have ran back to help him anyway. Talia frowned, not even wanting to know what had happened as she could feel the ache in her other just by listening. She always kept her heart in a safe, but this guy just kept getting her others open. Then you wouldn't be here now, Grover argued. Annabeth would have been broken from losing her older sister and Luke would have snapped at losing his first friend. Like he did already, when he poisoned me while I was a tree, Talia spat, the betrayal of one of her earliest friends. No one spoke about that one, but Jason had a frown on his face for that one. Was something she didn't want to think about. Like Annabeth, she hoped that there would be a chance to return Luke back to how he was before. Annabeth and Talia scooted a bit closer to one another, grasping each other's hand as a means of support. Grover couldn't think of a response. How could he? He didn't feel direct betrayal from being poisoned and nearly killed by Luke. Sure, he felt betrayed that Luke has turned against the camp, but so did Annabeth and a good portion of Camp Half-Blood. He was the Naruto of the camp, older, funny, cheerful and upbeat. Always helping the campers that he could when he could, regardless of their cabin. You could say that Luke was keeping Naruto alive after his death. Hermes gave a sad smile at that. If only Luke had hung in there. He inwardly wept. Hey, we're going to Talia-chan, what's wrong? Speak of the devil and he shall appear in a flash of golden light. More like hunky angel sweetie, the love goddess corrected. The first thing Naruto noticed were the tears threatening to fall, and the last thing he expected was to be embraced by the daughter of Zeus. Shuddering and choked sobs escaped the 15-year-old girl, making Naruto frown as he quickly hugged her back. Event moment, it's an event, the reader cheered. Rubbing her back, he looked at Grover, who silently told him to take care of it before running off to regroup with the others. Shish, Taliya-chan, what's wrong? Naruto asked, slightly worried as this was very out of character for the girl in his arms. You're telling me, pal, Taliya agreed. Taliya pulled herself together and rested her head on the teen's chest before softly replying. Having not heard her, Naruto asked, what did you say? Don't leave me, Taliya pleaded, looking up at him, please. I can't lose anyone else. Not like I did Jason and Luke. Jason flinched a bit and looked at his sister with pained eyes. She looked back at him and let go of Annabeth's hand and grabbed his as they squeezed each other's hand lightly. They were together, that was what mattered right now. Naruto's jaw twitched, but he shook the feeling off and hugged her tighter. He leaned down and captured her lips once again in a soft kiss. Taliya slowly relaxed into the kiss, her cheeks heating up and her depression falling away. Ah, cooed the girls and the guys blanched at the mushy moment. Taliya hid her face with a groan. After a good few seconds, they parted and Naruto rested his forehead on hers like he had before. They stayed like that for a few moments, electric blue eyes staring into blue eyes with a second ring of gold around it. Naruto broke the silence, speaking softly, I can't guarantee that I won't die again, Taliya-chan, but I'll do my damn best not to. Even if I do, Lord Hades himself will have to drag me to Tartarus before I leave you. Hades pursed his lips at the thought of having to do manual labor just for one soul. Promise? Taliya asked in a similar soft tone. Naruto grinned at her and stole another kiss. When they broke, he whispered out, it's the promise of a lifetime. Okay, that sounds familiar, Apollo said after a moment, putting a hand on his chin in thought. Cheesy, much? Ares snorted. Shush you, Aphrodite snapped before sighing happily, oh this is turning out wonderfully. Who wants to read next? Frank had thought he was stealthy, but sadly, he wasn't. He was Utah and smuggled into a lion's den, laterally. He transformed into one and showed dominance in the face of the leader of the small pride of lions. But that wasn't the worst news, no. He was in a circus. Come on you hairball, your need for the show. One of the circus people shouted at him and he begrudgingly became part of the show. Good thing he closed his mouth on the lion tamer's hand though. It was the little things that mattered after all. 14. I'll do it, Hephaestus offered gruffly. His wife dropped the book into his hand and he cleared his throat before he started to read. Naruto and Taliya regrouped with the others a few minutes after Taliya had recomposed herself. The moon was further west than normal, but the group attributed that to Apollo resuming his duty. Naruto called for everyone to make camp and be ready to wake up bright and early. Once he found a place to lie down, Naruto immediately passed out with a snore. Percy saw this and a dark eyebrow went up in amusement while he thought, guess making out and running from a giant pig is exhausting. Wonder which one took more out of him. It does beg the question, Percy said with a snicker. Figures, Taliya murmured as she sat down next to the blonde on his left. Why not snuggle a wee bit closer, Taliya? Piper asked teasingly. The raven-haired teenager lay on her side, looking at the snoring blonde with a small smile on her face. Her eyes shut while she focused on the sound of his snores. Aphrodite cooed at that and Taliya just groaned into her hands. Someone make it stop. Phoebe and Zoe chose to sleep to Naruto's right with a good distance between them. Grover went to take the closest spot by the hunters, but was stopped by his amused yet exasperated friend when Percy grabbed the satyr's arm and shook his head no. You can kiss their butts tomorrow, Percy grumbled as he plopped down and closed his eyes, sleep time now. Grover sighed but agreed, falling to his back with a grunt before he joined the others in the realm of Morpheus. Naruto's eyes snapped open just as the sun began to rise in the distance. With a grumble, he hugged his pillow tighter and rested his cheek against the fuzzy edging. It took a few seconds before Naruto made the realization that he didn't fall asleep with a pillow, let alone a body-sized one. No, Taliya whispered in a horrified voice. Blue eyes with miniature sun-like pupils snapped open before looking down at his pillow. The blonde's face quickly became red at what he found. "That's a yes, Talia," Annabeth whispered back, trying her best hold in her laughter. Talia had at some time in the night moved to lie next to him, resulting in their current spooning position. "Well, you know about subconscious desires, right?" Nico asked with a smile, getting Talia to look even more horrified. Her representative was falling so fast. The blonde briefly wondered if a quick kawarimi with someone else would benefit him or if his best course of action would be to jump up from his position. "I would swap with Zoe. It would be the funniest thing ever," Percy commented grinning, getting Annabeth to nod with him. He wouldn't have the chance to do either as Talia started to stir. "MN. Stupid rocks," grumbled the raven-haired girl as she shuffled in her sleep in an effort to get even more comfortable. When that failed, she reached behind her towards Naruto's waist where his morning issue was pressing against her. An uproar of laughter filled the chamber as Talia just wanted to die, right there and then. Naruto opened his mouth to say something, but it became a squeak when Talia successfully grabbed the offending rock and began pushing it away from her, though it was more along the lines of rubbing Naruto. "You have to be a bit more gentle, Talia. Unless he's into that," Aphrodite supplied. Talia turned to her undead uncle and desperately begged, "Kill me." Hades smiled evilly and shook his head. "No, this is far worse." Not too keen on getting caught in this embarrassing situation, Naruto quickly grabbed her wrist and pulled his hips back away from her. He quickly released her arm and pulled his other hand out from its resting place, rolling to face the other direction with a burning face. "Well, thankfully no one I know witnessed that," Naruto thought in relief. "Oh, he has no idea," Apollo chuckled out. Meanwhile on Olympus, Apollo was doubled over in laughter, tears escaping his eyes at what had nearly happened to his son. Sure, he thought that watching his kid sleep was weird, but when he saw the daughter of Zeus had cuddled up to him, he had to see it play out. Not to mention Artemis wasn't around to scold him for being so immature. The thought of his sister made Apollo's laughter die out before he sighed, "Better get back to the search." "Do me proud, little Maelstrom," Apollo thought with a smile as he returned to Saul with a flash of light. Naruto sneezed as he stretched, rubbing his nose. The blonde looked at the sun with an accusing glare. "Oh, I wonder what for?" Artemis asked sarcastically. Apollo looked sheepish. After a moment of silence, he decided to start waking the others up. Going around the small camp, he started to jostle his fellow quest-goers awake. Talia woke up with a small glare that he thought was cute. "Well, we now know he likes one of Talia's permanent settings," Leo jested, ducking under a tossed snack. Percy wiped away the drool that had pooled up around his mouth. Percy groaned in annoyance. He still did that. And Grover spat out the dead bush he was gnawing on in his sleep. Waking the hunters proved to be unnecessary, as they had woken up to Naruto's sneeze. "Ever alert," Talia said with a smile. The Guardian grinned at his fully awakened group before looking to the west. Looking back, he recapped the plan. "All right, we're going to head towards Uncle Hef's junkyard. Remember, don't take anything." The group nodded back to him and they began their trek towards the junkyard in question. Naruto led the way with Talia close behind him. After a few minutes of silent traveling, Percy spoke. "So, maybe I should have said this earlier, but Apollo gave me some advice. If it had anything to do with girls, I suggest you just forget about it," Naruto quickly replied with a smirk. "Hey," the sun god shouted. Talia snickered while the two hunters smirked at the jab of their goddess-womanizing brother. "Always picking on me," Apollo pouted with crossed arms. "Well, yeah, I did that already," Percy returned with his own small smile. "I am so giving you a sunburn for that, Jackson," Apollo grunted as Percy sputtered. "Why him?" "But I'm talking about the quest. He said something about this guy near us." "Nerus," Naruto and Zoe corrected before eyeing each other. Naruto spoke first. "Jinx. You owe me ramen." "TCH, I owe thou nothing," scoffed the hunter with a frown. Naruto countered. "You so owe me ramen. I jinxed you, therefore, you owe me ramen." Zoe would never understand that. Annabeth smirked, getting snickers from Talia and Percy. "I was under the assumption that you and Grace were What do they say today? An item. Do you really prefer raw men to her? Phoebe asked with a smirk. Oh ho, a hunter with some zing. Ares laughed with the others. Great, even Phoebe says so, Talia muttered with burning cheeks. The group laughed as the two turned red and started to splutter out excuses while they walked. Talia at the claim of the two demigods being an item and Naruto at the insinuation that he might be gay. How do you not know what ramen is? Naruto finally asked when he got his blush under control. It's the food of the gods. No, it's not, said the gods. I thought that was ambrosia, Percy teased. Exactly, Annabeth stated. Same thing, dismissed Naruto. Dad told me that in the East they found a stash of ambrosia and managed to liquefy it. They added the ambrosia to a bowl of noodles and thus began the wonderful gift to man known as ramen. Everyone turned to Apollo, who just shrugged haplessly. Holy crap, are you serious? Talia asked with wide eyes as the others stared at his back. Nope, Naruto replied with a grin. Mortals and monsters can't eat ambrosia, Talia-chan, but they created the equivalent to it. It is ramen. It's even in the name. Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the gods above for the delicious food they bestowed unto us. I believe we found something wrong with his head, Athena pointed out blandly. Talia stared at the blonde before smacking him upside the head for his lame attempt at a joke. Naruto blinked twice before looking at her with a glare. First of all, ow, the blonde said before grinning once more, and secondly Zoe-chan still owes me ramen. Pay your dues, Zoe, Talia said with a smirk. I owe thee nothing, Zoe growled in frustration. Percy and Grover stifled their snickers when she locked a glare on them. Phoebe and Talia still smirked despite the warning look the lieutenant sent their way. You keep telling yourself that, waved off the blonde. He looked at the son of Poseidon with an arched brow. So, my dad said to find Nerus? Yeah, dunno why, though, shrugged out Percy. Naruto nodded with a hum of thought. Well, we'll deal with that when we get to California, the blonde said. He's a sea immortal, so he'll most likely be around the coast. Indeed, Zoe agreed, we must make haste. Lame, Nico groaned. So old-fashioned talk, and he should know. For the love of, no one says that anymore, Nightshade. Talia said with an annoyed look on her face. Leave it be, Talia-chan, Naruto said with a smile. It's not Zoe-chan's fault she's so inept to the ways of modern English. Can you imagine how she'd react to Ebonics? The Archer twins, the Hunter, and the Wisdom C combo laughed at that one. Oh, poor Zoe if she started to speak that way. Not waiting for a response, he turned back around and peered ahead. Well, I'm not usually a betting man, but $10 says that's Uncle Hef's junkyard. The other five followed his gaze before their eyes landed on a large fenced-off area with several large silhouettes. The group returned to their silent trek as they raced towards the junkyard. As they got closer, Naruto's left wrist started to burn, though he pushed the feeling away. Upon reaching the main gates after a good 10 minutes of walking, Naruto was gritting his teeth at the pain his bracelet was giving him. He slowed down, gaining the attention of the others who followed his example, before he came to a complete stop. Naruto grabbed at his wrist with a pained groan and fell to one knee. The blonde glared at the bracelet. What is your deal, Q? What's his bracelet's deal? Piper questioned. Well, so what Madara-sama said is true, a voice familiar only to one member of the group said. Naruto quickly turned around and glared at the tall blue man with a shark-like face. He wore a black cloak with red clouds decorating it and a faceguard that had a metal plate similar to Naruto's belt, only with 4 squiggling lines and sliced across. He had piercing golden eyes and spiked navy blue hair. Sharp teeth were revealed in a sinister smirk as the man swung a giant bundle of bandages over his shoulder. Poseidon, what animal did you boink this time? Hades asked with a deadpan. I did no such thing, the sea god retorted with a red face. Kisame, Naruto growled, his eyes flickering red, how did you get here? You know this guy? Percy asked quietly. Unfortunately, Naruto replied as he stood up while still holding his arm, answer me, fish face. How'd you get here? Well, Percy is there for the quest, Nico answered with a snicker. Hey. TCH, Not that it's any of your business, brat, but I was given a ride here by Madara-sama. Kisame answered before smirking once again. His language changed to English, and with a very heavy accent, he asked, "So, we going to do this the easy way, or am I going to have to shave your legs off?" "Bah, that's hardly threatening. Shave off your legs? Boring," Ares grunted with a frown. "You're going to try," Naruto replied with a scowl as he sent chakra through his bracelet and announced, "Roar for me." "What's this? A new trick?" Kisame asked with a grin. The rest of the group was taking steps back as Kisami's killing intent started to leak out from his excitement. Percy felt like he was choking on air, that the blue fish guy was going to kill him in one of the most brutal manners he could think of. That's interesting, the god of war mused. Maybe he could figure out how to radiate even more bloodlust and get that effect. Naruto held his left arm out as a red light emitted from the wristband. His shield and sword reappeared, and Naruto quickly grabbed the handle of his blade, making the fox-like face on his shield glare at the human Biju. "Ha ha ha ha, look at you, brat, playing swordsman, how cute," Kisame laughed out as he swung his blade into the ground. "Alright, let's see just how good at kenjutsu you are." "He means sword technique," Apollo quipped to those who didn't know Japanese. "Guys," Naruto called out, snapping them from their varied hallucinations, "on my mark, run for it. I'll hold him off as best I can." Ares whooped, "Yes, another fight. You want us to leave you here against that?" Percy cried out in disbelief. Naruto looked over his shoulder at him with a stern glare. "Yes, none of you are ready to face Kisame," Naruto answered while internally he continued, "Neither am I. I'm nowhere near prepared to fight an S-rank nin. My best chance is to use that, stall and then run for it." "Oh, secret weapon time?" Leo asked eagerly. "Are you insane?" Talia asked him with a growl. "We're not going to leave you behind, Whiskers. We'll take him down together." "No, you won't," Naruto shouted at her, causing her to step back at the fierce response. He glared at her and then back at the still smirking Kisame. "If you fought against him, Talia, you'd die within minutes. This isn't a mindless monster that has a weakness. This is a human on par with Herc the Jerk in terms of strength and a master swordsman from my homeland. He's here for one thing." "Seriously? I doubt he can match Hercules," Ares stated with disbelief. "We don't know though, so who can say?" Athena pointed out. "And I've got you this time, you fucking brat," Kisame announced as he suddenly appeared in front of Naruto with his massive weapon heaved over his shoulder. His bandaged weapon clanged against Naruto's shield as Naruto tried to hold his ground. This wasn't like fighting Ares' son, no. This was a life or death situation that only he had a chance of surviving. "Zoe, you're in charge. I'll catch up with you later, now move," barked out the blonde as he began building up energy from all around him. "We have to go," Zoe announced as she and Phoebe began running for the junkyard. Talia hesitated, looking at the struggling blonde with an obvious conflict written on her face before his eyes met hers. "Of course I wouldn't want to leave. I do so once and he died," Talia said with a frown of guilt that her other was probably feeling. His eyes narrowed and she took the hint, turning to follow after the uneasy Percy and Grover. The others didn't see the tears well up in her eyes as she thought back to the last time he forced her to move on. Talia frowned at that. Naruto grit his teeth as he felt Samahata start to drain him through the connection with his shield. Kisami's grin became wider as Naruto made a desperate slash with his sword at Kisami's open arm. The former shinobi of Kirigakure no Sato took the hit and kicked the blonde away, the grin on his face not once dying out as the blonde soared backwards before landing on the rough topsoil of the desert on his back. "Come on, brat. 7 years later I'd have expected some sort of challenge," Kisame taunted with a smirk. "Ooh," jeered the god of war. "And I expected you to have been made into someone's sushi dish by now," Naruto returned with a scowl. He pushed himself to his feet and charged forward, ducking under Kisami's surprisingly fast swing while simultaneously slashing at the man's side. A backhanded fist made him stumble backwards before he had to roll out of the way of a downward falling Samahata. Kisame chuckled as he spun the handle of his blade in his hand, causing more of the bindings to come undone. The blonde felt his blood leave his face as he paled when the full form of Samahata was revealed. The sword laughed at him, making his stomach flip in worry. A sentient sword? Hephaestus asked, intrigued. Awesome, Ares stated with a mad grin. I told my leader that I'd be quick so that those pesky immortals don't find out about our plan, Kisame said as he gave his sword an affectionate pat. Pesky? Poseidon frowned deeply. His younger brother had started to turn red in the face and Hades shrugged as he was used to that sort of thinking being applied to him. Now hold still so I can shave your arms and legs off. Naruto narrowed his eyes and sheathed his blade. He rotated his shield wearing arm's shoulder and the Arcadia shield spun around. With his determined eyes locked on his current foe, Naruto spoke with conviction in his voice. Lord of the Wild, Lord of the Land, I call upon the power of Pan. Shield of Pan, reveal your true form. In payment, I sacrifice my own arm. A sacrificial prayer? I have not seen such a thing since the old days, Artemis frowned in worry. And he did it so brazenly, too. Apollo was frowning along with her, wondering what his kid was thinking. His words finished, the Arcadia shield started to glow and the blonde started to show signs of using nature chakra. Naruto released a bellow of pain as the Arcadia shield started to segment itself and expanded up to his shoulder. The shield wrapped around his arm, replacing muscle and bone with solid metal. The blade once sheathed within had become fused with a gauntlet that seemed a size too large for the blonde. Now his left arm was easily twice the size of his right and Naruto's left side of his face gained several red segments of metal that matched his new arm. Whoa, Leo surmised everyone's thoughts. That's just awesome, Nico said quietly. Hey, that's new. Guess I better stop playing around, Kisame commented as he stabbed Samahata into the ground. He rapidly started going through some hand seals. Sweeten. Bakusu Shoha. Water release. Exploding water colliding wave. Raising his left hand to cup his mouth, Kisami's cheeks swelled up before he began to spew water to the point that Naruto became concerned he was facing a direct relative of Perseus, or worse, a descendant of Oceanus. Poseidon rumbled at the very mention that the Titan would have a descendant. If it was true, he hoped the young demigod killed him. I can't do that, Percy said in awe. I mean, it would take a lot out of me. And I mean a lot, but wow. Jumping over the water with the chakra forced into his legs, Naruto bypassed the raging liquid with his new fist cocked back. Say it, don't spray it, asshole. Kisame was impressed that the brat managed to avoid being hit by the rushing water, something even elite Jonin struggled with when they fought, but he was downright pissed when the blonde's fist collided with his jaw. Eat it, shark bait, Talia cheered. A little louder, Talia, Jason joked with a smile. Oh, shut it, Jay. Like he had done to Naruto, Kisame soared away from his makeshift lake. After he stopped skidding along the dirt, Kisame got to his feet with an angry scowl. You little shit. Sticks and stones, sushi man, Naruto taunted. He was panting heavily and that was because he hadn't trained enough to use his full-on, Sage mode, with the Arcadia fusion yet. Mostly because he wasn't too keen on sacrificing a limb each time he had to use it. But like with Pain, Naruto had to go all out against the S-rank missing ninja from the get-go or he'd be dead in minutes. Perhaps even less. Wonder what else these so-called S-rankers can do. Ares mused in keen interest. Oh, that's it. You're going to make Samahata real happy as she feasts on your flesh, Kisame snarled as he raced forward. Naruto deflected the swung blade and countered with a left cross to the blue man. Kisame grunted and stumbled backwards before swinging again. Cheeky little shit. Just die already. Can't do that, Naruto replied as he ducked under the swing and pulled his hand back. I promised someone important to me that I wouldn't die just yet. Aphrodite smiled brightly as she squealed, oh, you hear that, Talia? A shout out for you, Tilda. Talia was pink-cheeked, but she had a tiny smile on her face. Naruto's fist flew forward and impacted right in the Akatsuki member's stomach, knocking the wind out of him. Naruto then used the Hiraishin to reappear behind Kisame, throwing out all sorts of left-handed combos against the older shinobi's unguarded back. I wonder the true mechanics of that technique, Athena studied with calculating eyes. His barrage finished, Naruto returned to the front of his opponent and his large left hand opened wide. Kisame, looking through a squinting eye, suddenly groaned as he saw a bright golden ball spin to life in Naruto's hand. It's been fun, Kisame, but I've got things to do, goddesses to save. You know how it is, Naruto said with a smirk as he brought his arm forward. Eat this. Taiyoten. Rasengan. Sun release. Spiraling sphere. Woo, Apollo cheered, arms in the air. Sun move. He made a sun move. Kisami's arm moved quickly, bringing Samahata down to defend himself and absorb the chakra attack coming his way. What he didn't know, however, was that Naruto's new god-enhanced nature chakra was far too potent for the sword to handle, resulting in it failing to defend him. So it absorbed this chakra stuff, but since Naruto had it so thick, it couldn't, right? Leo surmised with a tilted head. Correct, Annabeth nodded, wondering what else chakra could do. The handheld sun easily broke through Samahata's scales, cracking the base of the sword while also forcing Kisame to once again soar through the air, this time over 50 feet away. A flying fish, Hazel snarked. When the giant blue man hit the ground, a silent scream escaped his lips as the previously attacked back was shattered on impact. Oh, I just hate when that happens, Ares mocked complained with sympathy. His spine was, thankfully in his case, still intact, but was heavily bruised and all the nerves underneath the bruises were sending alerts to the man's brain. His body caught up with the damage it was dealt and he coughed up blood. Placing his empty hand on the ground, Kisame struggled to get back up, collapsing back to the earth with blood pooling around him. Hopefully dead, too, Percy commented with a frown, not liking this guy. Resting on a knee, Naruto panted while glaring at the downed shinobi, waiting a few moments to see if the man would get back to his feet. Cautiously approaching the body, Naruto reached down and pressed his normal hand's 2 fingers against the man's neck, searching for a pulse. There was none. Good, Poseidon said sternly. This wannabe merman was a mockery to his kingdom. Glad to know that the man was dead from the blows that would crumble boulders, Naruto drunkenly ran towards the junkyard, hoping to regroup before he lost the dwindling sage mode and consequently his arm. And then there's that whole blood loss issue. Passing out so close to a stronger enemy determined to try and retrieve the Kyuubi no Kitsune was not a good idea for the one that knew where the creature was. Even if said enemy was dead, the allies of said enemy would consequently try to capture him in his weak state, which was something he really couldn't afford right now. A wise play, Athena nodded. We shouldn't have left him, Talia shouted as she and Zoe argued in the middle of the large junkyard. Did you see that guy? He's a monster. So worried, Piper smiled to the hunter. You would be too if it was Jason. Talia frowned at the girl, making the child of love stop with a wince. I was just messing around, she murmured. Thou heard Uzumaki, Zoe retorted. We wouldn't have stood a chance. Not to mention we still have to find Lady Artemis. So you're willing to sacrifice any of us just to save her? Is that all a hunter is? Talia accused. Artemis winced at that. Thy mouth shall get thou in trouble, Grace. Zoe snapped angrily. Uzumaki knows that man. He is best suited to stall and retreat. You felt that shockwave, don't pretend you didn't. Cried out the daughter of Zeus. He could be in trouble, or. Talia, Percy said, stepping forward and putting a hand on the older girl's shoulder. Her attention on him, the younger demigod continued. He's gonna be okay. Look, I may not be his best friend, but even I know when to admit someone's stronger than me. Look at Percy, manning up that he's weaker, Nico cooed. Percy scowled at his cousin. Yes, the blonde demigod was stronger, but he felt his other would catch up to him. Hell, he beat Ares in a prank war. How many demigods can claim that? Nice way to try and lighten the mood, seaweed brain, Annabeth smiled to her boyfriend. I try, the green-eyed boy shrugged. Talia gave a small smile while rubbing at her eyes. Thanks, kelp head. Talia groaned. Why was her other being so emotional? Maybe it really was that time of the month. An insult? Percy inwardly complained before shaking that kind of thinking off. Talia was still worrying about the blonde and was struggling to keep up her tough girl routine. She was doing a good job at that, in Percy's opinion. Thanks, Percy, Talia smirked towards. Well, you got to let the walls down once in a while, Percy shot back grinning. PSH, yeah right, the daughter of Zeus retorted. Well, didn't expect a speech from you. Saltwater breath, panted out a familiar blonde as he entered the clearing. Percy threw his hands in the air. I compliment him. And even when he is bleeding out he insults me. Come on. The three campers looked at him before exclaiming his name in relief. Talia mimicked his ability to teleport with how fast she moved to his side. Before he could protest, Talia engulfed him in a hug. Talia, Annabeth groaned. The guy was missing an arm. Talia blushed in embarrassment for her other. It was a common mistake. Could happen to anyone really. Ow, shit, fucking gods damn it, the blonde screamed in his mind. Talia suddenly gasped as Naruto released a cry of pain when his arm vanished. Falling to his side, Naruto grabbed at his missing limb with a scream, shit. Naruto, oh my god, guys, don't just stand there. Help me, Talia cried out frantically as blood started to leave the blonde. Phoebe moved the increasingly hysteric teen out of her way. Geez, Talia said with pursed lips, I really lost my cool. As she pulled down Naruto's jacket to reveal the missing arm. Holy, oh gods, Grover interrupted Percy as they caught a glimpse of the armless teen. Shit, gods above, it hurts. Naruto cried out, his eyes clenching shut, fuck. This is a lot of blood. How'd you lose it? Where is it? Phoebe asked sternly, looking at the wound while also trying to stop the bleeding. I can reattach it if we get to it quickly enough. Ah, Phoebe and her miracle work. Talia nodded. The girl was really good at healing. I sacrificed it. Aw shit. Fucking gods. I didn't think it'd hurt this much. Naruto exclaimed as tears left his eyes. You what? Phoebe and Zoe exclaimed with wide eyes. Explain later. I need my bracelet. Naruto cried out, fighting back the tears and the pain. If he went into shock, he wouldn't come back this time. It was part of the agreement the Fates and Thanatos made with Hades and Persephone to return him back to life. If Naruto died on a quest, no matter what his fate was, he wouldn't be allowed back. That's one hell of a deal, Apollo hissed through his teeth. Hades just nodded before commenting, I find it acceptable, but now that he knows what it's like to die, I believe he would be more prone to live and survive. He seems like a survivor. Bracelet. Zoe, find the bracelet he's talking about, Phoebe said before grabbing Talia's shaking arm. You want to help? Then put pressure on his wound. Jackson, Satyr, get me a rag to use. Right, the two cried out as they ran through the junkyard and began searching for a rag to give to the hunter. Zoe was searching where he had come from, spotting a glinting golden edge. She pulled the bracelet from the ground and looked at it. It was a beautifully golden band in the shape of a quadruped animal, like a fox. The animal's head was a red gem, far too red to be a ruby. Take me to the kit, a deep voice demanded. Zoe looked around in worry before looking down at the gem. The ruby-like gem gained a black line, similar to a slitted pupil, before the voice boomed once more. Move, you stupid nymph. Return me to Naruto's side. Wow, a demanding accessory. I don't think I want it, Aphrodite dismissed, but she did like that it was yelling at Nightshade though. At the behest of the strange voice, Zoe ran back to where the blonde was being treated, with Talia fighting back tears as she held her hands against the wound to stop the bleeding. Talia winced worriedly. Hopefully the guy made it. She would hate for her other self to lose him. Naruto's eyes were half open and he was muttering in the strange language that he and his opponent had spoken before. Phoebe was searching her pack for more ambrosia to keep the quest leader with them. Put me on his right wrist, the voice ordered, earning the other girl's attention. Zoe nodded and did as she was told, while inwardly wondering just what Naruto had in his possession. A red glow came from the gem and Naruto's eyes started to change. His normally blue and golden irises turned blood red and his pupils became slits. The sclera turned black as the red light grew in intensity. Talia released a shocked cry and retracted her hands as bright red energy bubbled over the wound. Whoa, Leo cried out in surprise at the bubbling stump. Before the eyes of the three girls, a new arm started to form. The bones were recreated, quickly followed by the veins and muscle. As the skin started to reform over the new limb, Naruto's eyes faded back to their unusual colors. He looked at the shocked girls' faces and a wry grin crossed his face. Apollo, since when could any of your children regrow limbs? Athena asked in a stunned tone. They can't, Apollo said in equal awe at his kid. Okay, what else can this guy do? Percy asked with wide eyes. Guess I'll be explaining myself when I wake up, Naruto mumbled softly before he passed out from exhaustion. That you do, ass. Talia scowled in anger. The jerk, he had her other self, as well as herself, worried. Some of the other heard Talia and quietly snickered to themselves. When Naruto was possibly bleeding out from his missing limb, back with the former Kirigakure shinobi, a figure stepped out of a large vortex-like portal. Crouching down next to the large form of the human Biju, the figure glared at his head through the single hole in their orange mask. TCH, what a waste of time, Madara sneered before standing upright and kicking the corpse in the shoulder. Get up. I know you're still alive. Kisami's eyes snapped open and his shark-like appearance increased when he grinned. What's wrong, Madara? Is Toby too tired to play? TCH, the brat should have just stabbed the corpse, Ares scolded in disappointment. Your humor doesn't amuse me, Kisame, Madara growled as the man stood up slowly, wincing as he did so. The legendary Uchiha continued, the only reason you're alive is because of that seal I placed on you. Kisame chuckled before reaching up and adjusting his headband. A piece of paper fell out and landed in his hand, making the blue human chortle darkly as he looked at the intricate script adorning it. To think, this little thing convinced the Kyuubi brat to think my body was dead. So a runic array mechanism to fake a dead body. Clever, Athena mused. These seals were getting even more interesting as they came up. Do not underestimate the power of seals, Kisame, Madara cautioned as he took the piece of paper from the man. The Yondaime nearly killed me once with his seal-based ninjutsu. Something his son has managed to uncover the secret to. Because he's awesome, creeper. Just like his old man, Apollo said as his arms crossed proudly over his chest. You know, there's something about the fight that bugs me, Kisame mused after a moment of silence. The brat seemed to be unnaturally tired after he whipped out the giant arm. Maybe we should go hunt him down now? No, I expected you to lose anyway. This was merely to test the waters, as they say, Madara replied with a scowl. Besides, those immortals masquerading as gods are watching him as we speak. And the last thing we need to deal with is their interference. Filthy, arrogant mortal, Zeus boomed in anger. Immortals masquerading are we? I hope his death is long and painful. I know he'll be tortured for eternity. That's a given, Hades said in a frosty tone that dripped venom. The other gods agreed wholeheartedly. Mortals, what true fools they were. What if they find out about our plans? Kisame asked with a frown, well aware of the danger they were on the edge of unleashing. Madara didn't reply, making the shark-like man sigh in acceptance before he smirked yet again. So, I should go after the Hachibi next then? Yes, I have no doubt that Sasuke-kun was unable to capture him. It was merely a test of his loyalty, Madara replied as he opened another portal. Come, we must move quickly. I sense a large amount of power approaching. Who could it be? Apollo asked with a frown. Kisame nodded and without another word the two stepped into the portal. Just as the portal shut behind him, a stern older man appeared with a bag tied to his waist. Hanging over one shoulder was a large horn. The man looked around before scowling when he took note that one of the strong power signatures he was told to investigate had vanished. Lord Zeus won't be pleased, was all Boreas had to say on the subject before a loud and cold gust of wind came through the area and the god vanished. Did not expect to see him in this story, Hephaestus commented gruffly. He then offered the book up. Who's next? Me, Apollo said while raising his hand. This story keeps getting better and better. Here, the god of the forge grunted, tossing the book to his half-brother. Artemis shook her head at her idiotic twin's antics. Frank managed to escape in the middle of the night from the circus, which he was thankfully for. They were planning on going worldwide in a month, with the new, smartest lion, in the world act. He was not pleased. He made it into Colorado and had stopped at a diner per bar to eat up and where he could hitch a ride from, until he was bummed into by a drunk. The drunk started shouting and challenged him to a game of darts for his impudence, for walking into the intoxicated man, the Colorado dart champion. Turns out the bar was hosting the annual All-State Dart Championship. With nothing to lose, Frank accepted with narrowed eyes with one goal in mind. Win.